All right, this video is about what to do when you sprained your wrist. And the reason we're doing this video is because Dr. Jessica sprained a wrist. Tell us how you did it.
It's kind of a cringy thing to describe, but so we were at Strong Side, that's where I work out. It's kind of like CrossFit-esque classes. And we were going for a 1-rep max power clean. So power clean is when you take a barbell and you bring it from the ground up to your shoulders and you don't do a full squat. You just kind of do like a little quarter squat at the top. So I hit 155, which is my current PR, and instead of doing a smart jump, which would have been 5 pounds at 160, I decided to go straight to 165, which is a 10-pound jump. And I don't know exactly what happened. I wish I would have gotten it on video, but basically I broke from the elbows or from the upper back, and I think my elbow kind of hit my knee, and then it pushed my wrist into hyperextension with the weight on there. So that's essentially what happened. And it was weird because it didn't actually, like at the time I was like, okay, my wrist hurts, but it wasn't like I was like on the floor, like rolling around like, oh, my wrist. Like it wasn't like that. I just was like, okay, my wrist like definitely got a little hurt there, but I was like doing this and it was okay. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna finish the workout. So I finished the workout, which had more power cleans in the workout that were lighter. I wasn't able to do push-ups. So I did push-ups on dumbbells because I couldn't push my wrist into extension. I was like, it's fine, I'll just do them on dumbbells.
Yeah.
And yeah, I finished the workout, and then throughout the day, that day, Monday, it just got continually worse.
Yeah. Well, that's sometimes what happens, right? Like if you have a lot of adrenaline when you're working out, you can kind of like fight through it basically. So yeah, Jessica definitely came into work that day, a little bit of pouty face. And of course, as a colleague and friend, I was not sympathetic. I was like, suck it up.
You're like,
what's your problem?
That sucks. Anyways.
Yeah, anyway. So, but you know, that's the way it goes. So the first question we always get with people after an acute injury is, do I ice and do I do ibuprofen or an anti-inflammatory, right, or an Advil? And so that's kind of there's a little bit of controversy about this right now. Not even controversy, or maybe two trains of thought, because it has been rest, ice, Advil, compression, all these things for a long time, the rice. But kind of our stance on it is it's okay to use those things if you need it, right? So the one side of the argument is inflammation is part of your body trying to heal itself. So you want some level of inflammation because that's your body trying to heal and you want to heal. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, and Jessica coming to work on Monday is a perfect example of this, where it's like she had a full, list of patients that she needed to see. And so if you have to use your limb, then you need to decrease the pain. So you use ice and Advil to decrease the pain so that you can actually use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some compression too.
Yeah, and so some compression, which is with the ACE wrap.
Yeah.
So that kind of gets us to our next point with this, and this is specifically with wrist sprains. Almost everything that we sprain, we want some level of movement because it's good for the body. It helps with the swelling, and the pumping action of movement helps to decrease swelling, helps to keep it moving. But the wrist is the one joint, and there might be another one. But anyway, that's the one that we're immobilizing. It is the best thing that you can do for a wrist. And so we immobilized it with an ACE wrap. It wasn't so bad that we felt like we needed to get a solid brace, but immobilizing it is really good for the wrist because it's really hard not to bend and move your wrist with everyday activity. So how did it feel on Monday with it immobilized? Was it better once we wrapped it? Or?
Yeah, I think it helped a little bit. I mean, it's much better today, which it's Thursday now, so a few days later. But yeah, on Monday, like by midday, I like could not even move my fingers. Like any like movement at all caused pain. So having the wrap on there just helped a lot, just to like make sure I didn't move it as much, and just kind of held myself very still. And that was interesting treating patients, but we got through it. We did it. But yeah, the compression definitely helped. I took some Advil, we iced it a little. All that stuff helped and got me through the day. So.
Yeah. So first step is reduce the pain if needed with ice and Advil or ibuprofen. If for some reason you don't need to reduce the pain and it's not that bad, then we recommend not taking it, right? Just letting the inflammation do its job. Then immobilizing the wrist, because that is what helps the wrist to heal, is actually immobilizing it. And a lot of times where there's a sprain, where there's been a big change in range of motion, where some ligaments could have gotten stretched, you actually want it to heal a little bit tighter. You don't want to have like a floppy wrist when it's all said and done because you mobilized it too much. Now, Jessica's kind of entering the stage where now that it's starting to feel better, and it's only been about 3.5 days, 2.5 days or whatever since it happened, we actually want to start doing range of motion. So just doing gentle range of motion is a good way to start. And I don't know, show us the different ways you do range of motion, like flexion, extension, pronation, supination.
Yep, so I mean, I'll show you on my good side. Just go into extension, just kind of as much as you can tolerate. I wouldn't necessarily push through pain at this point, just kind of go to the area of discomfort. And then obviously flexion coming down, same thing, because usually if you hyperextend your wrist in one way or the other, both ways are probably going to be uncomfortable. So just going back and forth here, you can go pronation, supination by just rotating, keeping the elbow stable and just rotating your wrist back and forth, and then radial and ulnar deviation, kind of going forward and back this way in this plane of motion.
Yeah. So as it feels better, without doing anything other than just slowly moving it around. And then slowly you can start taking the brace off, right? Like, just even driving the car may not bother too much, or some things where it's using a little bit of range of motion, but not too much. So slowly ease out of the brace, do some range of motion type exercises. And then kind of the last stage of an acute injury for the wrist is, once it starts to feel better, the range of motion is coming back, you do want to start strengthening it right away. And the first step of strengthening something like this is to do an isometric, basically. So you're not having to, curl the wrist a ton. An easy way to do an isometric, and I'll go over here and get one. I'll be right back. Is to use a weight or a kettlebell. And so just something like this, where you could just hold it, right? Hold the kettlebell, and then you can just rotate your wrist side to side. You can go this way and that way a little bit. So you're not flexing or extending the wrist, you're holding it steady while moving the weight around, and that will help to gently strengthen the wrist. So that is what you do for an acute wrist sprain. So if you sprained your wrist, or you've had some slight injury there, and you want to know what are the first steps, these are the first steps that we would take. Obviously, if there's a ton of swelling and it's not getting better, then seek professional help. And if you're someone out there who's having some wrist pain, we would love to help you out. Give us a call or comment below. All right, talk to you guys later.